Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was suggested independently from several sources. Amy attacks with Teval, the balanced scale, while she controls Traveling Chocobo, and returns a forest to play with its ability. Does she get one zombie token, or two? I recall reading a Reddit post by Toby Elliott, a highly experienced and influential judge who's worked directly with Wizards on a number of projects. That post basically said, once you get past a certain point, the hardest rules questions mostly tax your reading comprehension rather than your rules knowledge. And I think today's question typifies that observation beautifully. There's no rule that lists what specific templates of triggered abilities Traveling Chocobo's effect applies to. There's not even a rule that can be used to inform how they're intended to work. So the only thing to do in this case is to read the whole text and apply the rules of English to the text. In cases where it's unclear how to do that, well, hopefully some judge on the internet has published something about how it works. So how does it work? Well, let's start with a little bit of background on triggered abilities in general. Anytime anything happens in the game will check to see if what just happened matches the trigger condition of any triggered abilities. If so, the fairies who are in charge of triggered abilities will note that the ability triggered on their whiteboard. This is where Traveling Chocobo acts. If Traveling Chocobo's effect applies to the ability that triggered, the fairies will write that ability on the whiteboard an additional time. Unfortunately, the same event can be treated differently by different triggered abilities, which can lead to some non-obvious interactions with replacement effects or things that cause abilities to trigger additional times. For example, let's say you sacrifice a grizzly bears to cast a Bone Splinters. In that case, both Body Dropper and Blood Artist would trigger, but Teza Karlov would only give you an additional Blood Artist trigger. That's because a creature dying did not cause Body Dropper's ability to trigger. That card's trigger condition says, when you sacrifice another creature. The event that happened in the game did include a creature dying, but that's not what caused the ability to trigger. As further evidence that these really do need to be treated distinctly, it's possible to sacrifice a creature in such a way that it doesn't die. For example, if there was a Rest in Peace out. So let's apply that to the scenario from the original problem statement. The thing that caused Teval's ability to trigger was the forest leaving your graveyard. That event included a land entering the battlefield, but a land entering the battlefield did not cause Teval's ability to trigger. It's obviously possible for a card to leave your graveyard without that event involving a land or bird entering the battlefield, and it's even possible for a land to enter the battlefield in such a way that no card leaves your graveyard. This makes a pretty strong case that it was just a coincidence that the game event in the original problem statement happened to be associated with both of these. Even though the event that caused Teval's ability to trigger involved a land entering the battlefield did not cause Teval's ability to trigger. So therefore, you would only get one token. And now, here's a little bit of a dirty secret. I just said all this as though it was common sense and anyone with sound reasoning skills would come to the same conclusion, but that's simply not the case. If you've followed any of the online discussions of this scenario, you know that smart people can and did argue convincingly for both sides. The fact is that Magic's written rules do not follow the rigor of a mathematical proof or a computer program, and the way that they apply to any given situation requires some measure of interpretation. This interpretation is one of the duties of the head judge. Ordinarily, it's clear enough how to apply the rules that every head judge will apply the rules in the same way in all scenarios, barring some sort of a mistake, which of course is always a possibility when you're dealing with mere humans. Magic's rules managers have generally done a much better job than their counterparts in other TCGs in minimizing how often judges must rely on case law for a ruling, which makes it a bit jarring when these situations occur, but they're certainly not unprecedented. For example, when it was originally printed, Henzi Tor's ability did not function correctly for technical reasons. During that time, judges were advised to rule as intended in cases where it came up. When I published a video pointing out an issue with Wheel of Potential's wording, many commenters disagreed with me and argued that I was mistaken in my interpretation and that the printed wording on the card was just fine. There was a months-long stretch where the question of whether playing a dress down would reset the twice per turn cap on the ability Nadu grants all your creatures had an undefined answer. That question remains unresolved in the comprehensive rules, and the ruling we have now is based on a tweet from the personal Twitter of one of Magic's postgame, which was deleted when its author migrated his account from Twitter to Blue Sky. If anyone has a screenshot of the original, please email it to dave@judgingftw.com so I can archive it. So in cases where the comprehensive rules don't quite live up to their name, card rulings from the release notes can add confidence to a judge's ruling. There's one in Teza Karlov that backs up the ruling about how it interacts or does not with when you sacrifice triggers. There are no rulings of any relevance on Traveling Chocobo, nor Teval, nor any other cards with similar enough wording to be conclusive, but we do have a tweet from Magic's current rules manager that makes the intended interpretation clear. In case anyone's looking for it, here it is. That's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling. Until then, I hope you have a great day.